Веднага давам думата на Димитър Кенаров, известен журналист и поет, който ще води този разговор.
Merci, Dora. So I think that Michail and I decided to talk standing because otherwise
we need to see you.
we need to see you and you need to see us. I think it would be better this way, I guess. Right, Michail?
Absolutely.
A couple of words of introduction. Michail and I actually met a couple of weeks ago in Ferrara, in Italy, and we befriended each other there. And just a couple of days later, Tudora actually called me and she said, "Would you like to moderate a conversation with Michail Zigar?" I'm like, "Of course, we just met." So it's a wonderful coincidence. But actually, what I found also is that we're born the same year, and I'm 6 days older than Michail. We were born in 1981 in January. So I'm 6 days older, but he's probably 6,000 pages ahead of me in terms of literary output, which is he's also been he's been a war reporter for many years. He's reported on wars in Iraq and Lebanon, in Syria, Sudan, Palestine. He was for a while the deputy editor of Rusский Newsweek, the magazine, and a columnist for various other Russian magazines. And importantly also that he was editor-in-chief, founding editor-in-chief of Дождь TV, Rain TV, which was the premier dissident TV station back in the day. So I think you were from...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I used to call it normal television.
Yeah.
Every time when foreign journalists were asking me, like, you are oppositional TV channel, I would say, no, we are normal TV channel. Like, they are propaganda and we are just normal.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, you're right.
It was actually, I used to watch Дождь TV a lot, especially around the events of the Болотная площадь in 2012, 2013, 11, 12. And so he was the editor-in-chief of Дождь TV from 2010 to 2015. And he's also a filmmaker, has a couple of documentaries, and a very prolific writer. Several of his books have been translated into Bulgarian. His book,
I can tell you that all of my books were translated to Bulgarian.
All of them?
Yes.
Okay. So all of your books have. What about the war reporting book?
You're right.
Yes. All right. So he's got a book of war reportage.
I forgot about it.
Yes. All right. This is the thing when one forgets one's own biography, which is completely normal, by the way. And so All the Kremlin's Men is the book that was a big bestseller in Russia, right? For I think #1 bestseller for about 4 months, and it told the story of the rise of Vladimir Putin in Russia. It was translated in numerous languages, and
then it became #1 bestseller again 7 years after it was published, and it happened in March and April 2022.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know why even.
Well,
it happened.
I think we all know the reason why it became very popular.
Probably someone decided that something went wrong, and it's the right time to check. What was it?
Yeah. So it was twice bestseller, and another book, which is the first book that I actually encountered the first book of Michail's that I encountered is The Empire Must Die, which in Bulgaria is a doorstopper. It's 1,000 pages, and it's one of the most fascinating books actually of nonfiction that I have read. It's about the Russian, the years from the turn of the century. Sorry? Not a war stopper, just the doorstopper. But actually, each book of Michail's, I think, is also an attempt at being a war stopper as well. It's a book about the events in Russia from 1900 until the Russian Revolution, 1917, and another book which is it's called Everyone is Free, which is about the second election of Yeltsin in 1996 and the whole process that went to the election and all the ins and outs of the political scene at the time. And I think your final book is War and Punishment, right?
It's not finals.
The last one.
It's not the last one.
It's okay. The latest. So the latest book is War and Punishment, obviously a play on War and Peace and Dostoevsky's book. So it's a book about the relationship between Russia and Ukraine. It's not really a history of Ukraine as much as Russia's relationship to Ukraine over the centuries. But what I really love about Michail's work is that it's such a great mixture of vignettes and anecdotes and biographies and essayistic kind of writing and pop culture and history that it's really, I mean, Horace, the Roman poet Horace said that art or like poetry has to instruct and to delight. And I think Michail's books are doing exactly that. They're giving us a lot of information, but also they're very delightful to read and really page turners. And a final thing, Michail is left Russia right after the war began on February 24th. I think he left 3 days later. He's also he's also a criminal. He's been sentenced by the Russian state in absentia to 8.5 years in prison for spreading fake news about the Russian army.
Which also sounds beautiful.
Which, yes.
8.5. They were inspired by Fellini.
Yeah.
Why did they make it before engagement?
Oh, well, I'll ask him that as well. Yeah.
For the first,
Would you like to talk about this? Would you like to open up with this?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I forgot about it, but that's because of you. Yes. In my court case, there is an explanation why I'm considered to be a foreign agent, and the explanation is that because I received royalties from my Bulgarian publisher. Yes. Yeah, we should. I think record a video message to the General Prosecutor's Office of the Russian Federation with explanations that we do not regret, something like that. Yeah.
Would you like to talk a little? Because I remember reading one of your blogs, Substack, about the absurd kind of evidence that they had about the whole spreading of fake news about the Russian army, like a CD-ROM or. Would you like to talk?
I can tell you a different story,
okay.
Which is we have a lot of absurd stories how pathetic is current Russian regime, but I have completely mind-blowing story. After my last book, War and Punishment, was published. Obviously, in Russian, it was published outside of Russia because it's impossible to publish and to sell it in Russia. But it's sold in most of Russian bookstores in European countries. So just during the first month when the book was published in Latvia, someone, actually I even know that girl because she wrote to me after that. A girl was bringing the book from Estonia to Russia, and she was stopped at the border, and she was detained. The book was confiscated, and they started some kind of investigation, and the book was sent to a group of experts for the expertise to check if it contains any propaganda of extremism, terrorism, fascism, and so on and so forth. So the experts were reading book very carefully, and I read this report, and it's remarkable. It's clear that the experts loved the book. because they're quoting it. You know, even if I had the task to choose the best quotes of the book, I would have done it in the worst way. So because they chose the most powerful moments, they were obviously excited. But in the end, their conclusion was clearly the book does not have any propaganda of extremism, terrorism, or any forbidden ideology in Russia. So actually, by stating that, they saved everyone who's trying to bring the book to Russia from being accused of extremism. Because if their expertise was positive, if they wrote that, yeah, that's an extremist book, that would mean that every reader has to be arrested and probably go to jail. But their expertise was negative, so it's not an extremist book. So they saved a lot of people. They could not reject the fact that the book contains discreditation of Russian army and some fake news about the special military operation, as they call it. And after that expertise was sent to the court of Pskov, because the girl was stopped on the border between Estonia and Pskov region of Russian Federation. But the judge from Pskov somehow found that the documents were not right and returned it to the prosecutor. Prosecutor made sure that it was fine and filed the case for the second time. And for the second time, judge found some irregularities inside that, some bureaucratic stuff which has no meaning, and returned it back. And for the third time, the prosecutor did the same thing. And for the third time, the judge said, "Oh, it's expired. I cannot make any ruling on this court because you were preparing for too long." And I was really surprised by that, because it means that inside that terrible bureaucratic system, there are people who are somehow sabotaging, they do not protest openly, but they do not comply with it. They are not eager to be like the first people in the class. They know that something is, everything is wrong, and they are not willing to participate. And that actually made me rather optimistic. That doesn't mean that I was proven innocent. No, I'm still sentenced to 8.5 years. I have to be in jail right now instead of standing here. But it was very interesting revelation that a lot of people who are supposed to work for the system, they really try to stop the machine.
So in a sense, the system itself was trapped in its own Kafkaesque nightmare. That the bureaucracy itself started working against the system.
Some parts of the bureaucracy, because that definitely a lot of people are trying hard. A lot of people who are not affiliated with the state or writing denunciations. I had very funny story when my sister was trying to sell the apartment that once belonged to me. There were several potential buyers, and one of them wanted huge discount because she said, "Oh yeah, the apartment has very bad reputation because it used to belong to the foreign agent." The real estate manager said, no, the apartment is fine, so we won't give you any discount. And after that buyer filed the complaint to the investigative committee of Russian Federation, saying that real estate agent is trying to help the foreign agent to legalize his money. So some people are very willing to participate, to write the reports, to write denunciations, and to benefit from, to earn some money from that system of repressions.
So the system is, what you're saying is that the system is actually not that different from what was during the socialist period, in a sense.
I think it's different because it's, there is a huge difference. it's not, it's inside the people, but the current system is very capitalist. And it makes it very paradoxical, because we remember that was Volan's saying in Master and Margarita, written by Bulgakov, that people are still the same, but you know the issue of apartments spoiled them a lot. Now we have the same, but you know the system has become more capitalist. During the Cold War, there was an obvious clash between the socialist system and capitalist system, and some people who used to live in the socialist system, they kind of believed in it, or at least they believed that there is some kind of justice, free healthcare, free education. Now it's clear that this system is much more capitalist than the Western capitalism, because it's like, you know, in Russian we had that kind of propagandist cliche, звериный оскал капитализма. So that's now Russia's ideology. That's, you know, animal scream of capitalism. So yeah, a lot of people earn a lot. A lot of people try to benefit from this authoritarian regime, and it makes it much more cynical on every single level. You know, Putin's ghostwriter, who writes all the essays about history for him, former Minister of Culture Vladimir Medinsky, thinks of himself as a new Suslov. But you know, I cannot imagine Suslov having a yacht or going to the spa. So that's the difference.
Yeah. Well, a lot of your books are about debunking historical myths and trying to undermine sort of the state-sanctioned version of history, and you're trying to do a new kind of history, which looks at familiar subjects, at familiar people from a different angle. Yet history is always, as you say in one of your books, you know, a lot of the people who you've interviewed or people that have given evidence, they lie, right? For consciously or unconsciously, they often lie. So my question to you is, how do you debunk historical myths while also avoiding the creation of new historical myths?
I'll start with a short story about how you can see that the person sincerely lies. Because most people lie sincerely, not because they want to lie. They edit their memories and they start believing in their own lies. And when they tell the same lie for the second time, it's not even a lie, because they remember they remember it. For the current book that I'm writing right now, I interviewed many times Mikhail Gorbachev. And he was a remarkable person, very nice person, but he did an amazing job editing his memories. So he stopped remembering anything that was bad, and he started sincerely believing that he was some kind of mixture of Václav Havel and Sakharov, probably. So he started remembering that he has always been a true Democrat, and he was trying hard to make Soviet Union free country. And he did not remember anything that he was kind of Soviet dictator. And during one of the interviews, I really decided to touch all those painful zones and to remind him of some kind of inconvenient truth. Actually, my first question was, Mikhail Sergeyevich, do you remember the day when Ceausescu was killed? What did you think? Did you think I'm the next one? And that was actually the last question, because like I saw that like his eyes started rolling inside and he started speaking to me, and it was clear that like that's his traditional blah, blah, blah. He was speaking as if he was delivering a speech at the 19th Party Conference in 1988. He was like, it was completely meaningless, but like it was clear that he was deep inside paralyzed. He didn't touch that part of his memory for so many years. He could not imagine that he was really thinking that he could be the next one after Ceausescu. And actually, and yes, we know that that was his thought. And he discussed it with his aides, and he stopped remembering it. So it's always possible to check, because if person is lying, because we sometimes have a lot of sources. We can interview people, but every time I'm prepared for the interview, I know that I should know the story much better than the person I interview. I should know all the answers to all of my questions. And I get it from the open sources. I create a huge database, like day by day, what he or she was doing from the archives, from the newspapers. And so I should know all of the questions, should be very precise. And even if the person is lying, I should know it on the spot. And it doesn't mean that I should start arguing with the person. No, I don't think that you should undermine the credibility. No, if the person is convinced, we let him be convinced. But you should ask more and more from different angles, knowing that, okay, he or she forgot it, or cross checks with other characters, with other historical figures. Newspapers, diaries are always better than memoirs. There are a lot of different ways to organize that cross-examination.
Actually, this is a fascinating subject, because I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your writing process and research process, because your books are very heavily researched. It seems like it's not one person also who did it, but it's almost like an entire academy. They're so well researched in like very precise detail, hour by hour sometimes, and what's happening. And so I just wanted to ask you, how do you approach a new project? What is your writing process? What is your research process? Do you accumulate the entire information before you start writing it? Do you have sort of already a structure in your head of how this book is going to look?
I think as a writer, you know that that research is the best part of the work, because research is procrastination.
Absolutely.
You can research
It's for best procrastination
forever.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm happy because that's the thing I love the most. I can, like, when I'm really tired, I start researching, because that's the way how I rest. And actually, unfortunately, I know that I can't continue research forever, and until the moment when it's already late to start writing. I look for my fingers and I start writing, and that's very hard process to start. For example, my current book, the book about the collapse of Soviet Union, I was collecting interviews with the book that is going to be published next year. I've been interviewing people for the last 6 years. I was traveling to, and it was, that's the best work in the world. I decided that I need to interview all the last first secretaries of communist parties of all Soviet republics, and then all the first presidents, and all the leaders of democratic movements, and in 15 republics, and that's the job for forever. Yeah, clearly people are dying, so there is going to be the day when I won't be able to work any longer, but still it's a very long journey, and it's so nice. So by now I'm almost done with
the research part.
with the work. No, with writing.
Oh, with writing.
Yeah. It's like, I don't believe in inspiration. Like, work is work. You need to tell yourself, start working and use your fingers and write, and that's it. So I could maybe I'm lucky. I can write anywhere. There is a person in this room who saw me writing on the plane yesterday, and it was arrest, kind of arrest for me, because I was like relaxing while writing. And yes, and even now, I realize that I need so many more interviews. I should organize a Zoom interview with that opposition leader from Azerbaijan, and I should not forget about this pop star from Latvia, and so that's the best part of the work.
Does your reputation precede you? That is, does it make it easier for you to get access to all these people, or does it make it harder sometimes?
For some people, it's better, because some people might have heard about me. For some people, it's worse because they might have heard about me. There is an anecdote about two actors drinking next to the theater when there is a celebration of the anniversary of the theater, and they are only two left behind, and one of them is crying, and he says they did not invite me because they forgot about me, and the second one is laughing, they did not invite me because they remember me. For some people in Russia, my reputation is a problem, especially after my sentence, and I know that a lot of people, it's harder to, obviously they would not like to be quoted by me. So that could be a problem.
And how did you get into specifically nonfiction writing? Because it's a very specific thing, right? The writing of history. Were you considering being a fiction writer, or and what drew you to that kind of genre?
I'm so envious. Every time I meet any author who is writing fiction, I'm full of envy, because these are the truly happy people. They can write whatever they want, and they are getting the biggest audiences. They are truly loved by the audience. They don't write all those boring things I'm writing about. So yeah, I really wish I could write fiction. I don't know why. I'm not interested. I don't want to, and I really love. That at the same time, I'm sure that history, so true stories, true crime, true events are more fantastic, more dramatic than any kind of fiction. You cannot fake it. You mentioned my book. So if you were selling my book, I think you did it in the worst possible way, saying that's a book about second election of Boris Yeltsin. Yeah, that's it. But that's actually non-fiction dark comedy thriller about how the dead person was re-elected as a president, and a corpse became the president. So that's like Coen Brothers movie, I guess. But it was not fiction. It's real. So I'm really fascinated by that possibility to uncover something that nobody knows and what really happened, because I think it has capacity to change our lives more. Because I'm really obsessed with my idea that history is the unique factor that shapes the values. And we see our future, we create the image of our future of our society. When we're thinking about the country we would like to live in, or how our society should look like, we are based on our history. So that's our foundation for all of our dreams. And so that's a tragedy if just like in Russia, the only version of history is the imperial history, which leaves you no space to be proud of anything except for pride of violence. And I think that the lack of non-imperial history of Russia is a shame. And for example, I truly think that it happens very quickly. We saw that the different historical narratives of Russian Federation and of Ukraine exist only for 30 years after the 1991. And actually we saw that during the last 30 years, the most important historical myth that was circulating in Ukraine was the history of Zaporizhian host, of Zaporizhian Cossacks as free soldiers, liberated soldiers willing to fight for their freedom. And that was the most important cornerstone of the state historical mythology. And in Russia, it was Russian Empire. And as a result, we see the consequences. We see the spirit of one society and the spirit of another. So I do believe that the way how people perceive their history is really important for our future.
You say at the end of War and Punishment that we have to deny the state the right to dictate its perspective on history. But I wonder though, because every state, whether it's an imperial state, let's say like Russia or the United States to a certain extent, but any national state, any ethno-national state has its own official version of history, including Bulgaria.
Yeah.
And so is it possible at all for history to exist with, non-state sanctioned history? I mean, you and I and people in this room can read different versions, different narratives that undermine the state sanctioned history. But what I mean is that it's not only Russia that has this sort of problem. I would say it's a problem that exists in any nation state.
Let me tell you about the United States. Yeah. Oh, yes. First, the alternative historical narratives are possible. And I don't know if you've been to DC recently. There is the new museum that was opened approximately 10 years ago. That's the Smithsonian Museum of African American History. Probably one of the best museums in the world, and it gives completely different historical narrative from the point of view of the African American population. It tells the story of the slave trade, it tells the story of founding fathers, for example, and you see and you read the story of Thomas Jefferson, the person who wrote the Declaration of Independence, yeah, and who created all those principles, including pursuit of happiness. And we read the letters from his slaves to him, asking, and it's not fake, it's not fiction, like asking him, and what about our pursuit of happiness? And he was a slave owner, and he had he has children with his slaves, female slaves, and these children remained his slaves and were inherited by his children, by his white children. So in that museum, for example, there is completely different point of view on traditional sacred American history, and it's striking. Like in a way, it's traditional. It's very new historical narrative of the global history, because we definitely know nothing about slave trade, and we see no connection between the economic prosperity in Europe during the Enlightenment age and the slave trade. But actually, there was the direct connection. So probably not all, but by far the economic development of Europe in the 18th century, 17th century, was caused by a very beneficial slave trade. But so this attempt to write completely different historical narrative is visible in the United States, and we see the consequences. And actually, in a way, two victories of Donald Trump are the consequences of that conflict in American society. And just like in Russia, in America, there is a huge social dilemma between social conflict between one part of the population who the dilemma is pride or shame. And I think it's more or less in any country. Should we be proud of our history, or we should be ashamed of it? Should we explore some darkest parts of our history and repent and apologize and confess that it was bloody and we must be ashamed of it? Or we should not open all those dark, bloody pages. We should not undermine the glory of the past. We should not insult our past victories and let it be sacred. I think that's the biggest dilemma in Russia today. That's why Putin started this war, and we see the same dilemma in many countries. And actually, the main Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again," that means give us our great history. We want.
So what does it say about the United States then if they're elected Trump the second time?
That there is the society is very polarized, and it's gonna be polarized. So I think everywhere, just humanity is very polarized around those values, and history is very important platform that shapes the values. I think it's a problem that could be. I'm an optimist. I think that it could be, it should be discussed, and it could be discussed in a very, in a positive way, because I believe that the next generations are different. I can give you an example about Russia. Several years ago, before the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, there was the survey, and it was not about politics. So it's more or less reliable, and it was conducted by the independent polling agency, Levada Center. So it is reliable. And the question was about what do you think about LGBT? And we have several groups of people who were asked, and people older than 60. 60% of them said, what? What's your guess? Death penalty. Kill them all. All of them. 60% of Russians older than 60 years. And here is another group, younger than 40. And 60% of them says what? Equal rights. Legalize same-sex marriages. And I think that's, it's not 100%, it's not 90%, it's 60% of old people, 60% of younger people, but we see that gap. And that's a gap of different values that exists between people who were born and raised in Soviet Union, in Soviet atmosphere, in Soviet morals, and people of different generation who were born and raised on the internet, and who not in the troubled neighborhoods of Soviet cities. So I believe that the more we discuss our histories and our hesitations about the past and the future, the new generations are becoming better. Or, better, worse. It's bad word, yeah. They are becoming maybe a bit more free, but at least they are different.
Yeah. I think you're a greater optimist than I am, because my impression is actually that a lot of young people do vote for nationalist parties, and they do perpetuate the narratives that have been passed down from their parents or grandparents, even though they have not lived during the socialist period. Many of them adopt the views of the families they live with. So I think it all depends on what kind of demographic we're talking about and whether they're urban youth. Or,
Can happen, yeah.
Of course.
There is a very famous stereotype in Russia that Soviet Union was great because there was free education, free healthcare, and free internet for everyone.
Mihail, I want to ask you a question about Russian literature. And you talk about this quite a bit in War and Punishment, and the relationship between culture, literature, and empire, and the way certain works, let's say the works of Dostoevsky, or certain works by Pushkin, the poem about Poltava, they've all contributed to a certain kind of imperial mindset. Now, there was after 2022, there was this backlash against Russian literature in general. A lot of Pushkin monuments were taken down. Some classes of Dostoevsky were cancelled. How do we read Russian literature today?
I think that the monuments to Pushkin were taken down in Ukraine not because of his works, but because he's a symbol, and he has become the tool for oppression of Ukrainian language, and so that's the most important argument against him. But if we speak generally about, when I wrote the title of my book for the first time, War and Punishment, I had a lot of ideas about that. And yes, that's very symbolic combination of war and peace and crime and punishment. Yeah, Tolstoyevsky. And in a way, Tolstoy and Dostoevsky are like yin and yang of Russian culture. They are like dark side and bright side. And obviously Tolstoy is the good force, and Dostoevsky somehow is the evil force. And Tolstoy politically is fine. So he was pacifist. He was anti-imperialist. He was the first anti-war war reporter when he was working as a journalist during Crimean War. He wrote probably the first novel in Russian literature, at least, about the colonial war from the point of view of the enemy. Haji Murad is a great work written from the point of view of was Dagestani, but from Chechen Dagestani side. And for example, politically, I have a lot about Tolstoy in The Empire Must Die. He is one of the main characters. He was very politically controversial in his period, in his time, because he was strongly against, for example, Russo-Japanese War, and he wanted Russia to be defeated during that war. And it's completely different with Dostoevsky. We know quite a lot about his personal political point of view, and actually the most problematic are not his novels and not his works, but actually his blog. He was I don't know if you know that he was a famous blogger. He was writing a diary, and he published it every month as a magazine, which was obviously his blog, and it was terrible. Yeah, all the words, the most jingoistic, the most xenophobic, anti-Semitic thoughts are there. Most of all, he hated Turks, and he wanted Constantinople to be. He loved Bulgarians, but he hated Turks. He wanted Balkans and Turkey to be part of Russian Empire, and Constantinople to become the new capital. But in a way, even that even his works are very symbolic, I think, politically to what is happening right now in Russia. Because Crime and Punishment is exactly the novel that is explaining the current situation in Russian society. Because if you are talking to a person who lives in Russia and understands and tries to explain why this war happens, that person would tell you, okay, Americans can invade Iraq, why can't we invade Ukraine? And that's exactly Raskolnikov's dilemma. That's exactly, do I have the right to kill, or I'm a trembling creature? So that's exactly the question that Raskolnikov was asking himself. And he killed the old lady, the old woman, just to prove himself that he has the moral right to kill, to become the superhuman. And somehow current Russian state is trying to prove to itself that it is a superpower by killing thousands of people. But actually, like in the end, even for imperialist Dostoevsky, it was clear that crime comes with a punishment. So it's like even the person who is suspected to be on the wrong side of that moral dilemma was actually morally very convinced that the punishment follows, and it's impossible to make one crime or series of war crimes without being punished. So I think, which means that I do think that we need to discuss, we need to put all of them into the context. Yeah. We should not just consider them or any historic figure as sacred, a holy cow. No one is sacred. We should discuss. I started with Thomas Jefferson being a slave owner, and actually I've got a lot of problems with great Russian humanist writers of the 19th century being slave owners, and we don't discuss that. But they did it.
You mean serfs?
Serfs, there is no difference at all. It's like different term. The same.
Pushkin owned serfs.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah. Dostoevsky didn't, actually, but the rest of them did. And I think it should be. We should morally evaluate it. It's better for us. It's better for our mental health. It's better for them. Even they become more understandable. Even Pushkin, he has become a very famous poet when he wrote, I don't know the English title, The Prisoner of Caucasus.
Yes.
Kafkaski Plennik. Yeah, and that's probably the worst poem he wrote, because he was glorifying genocide, literally. And in the end of that poem, he writes that, I'm so happy that all of those people are going to be exterminated, and after that, this place is going to be a great summer resort for travelers. So it's, from today's point of view, it's terrible. But that was the most popular poem written by Pushkin during his lifetime. Much more popular than Evgeny Onegin, for example. And he has become really famous, popular because of that. Then was Poltava, and Poltava was clearly his attempt to make a deal with the authorities. So he knew that was propaganda. And actually, he wrote Prisoner of Caucasus when he was 20. So he was really young and stupid, and by the end of his life, he was expressing completely different political point of view. The Journey to Earth's Room, one of his last, that's actually a prose, and he writes about the war in Caucasus in completely different manner, and he praises Chechens, not Russian generals. And Bronze Horseman, Медный всадник, which offers completely different point. It was banned by censorship during Pushkin's lifetime, and it was not published when he was alive, because he obviously asks the same bloody question, which is so polarizing in America today. Can we call that empire that is built on blood and bones of its citizens a great empire? Was really Peter the Great? Because he is to blame for so many deaths. That's Pushkin's question. So he was himself the complicated human being and the complicated author, as any author probably. And I think that discussion is very vital, because, and it doesn't mean that we need to justify everything they did, but I think it will enrich us if we know better context.
What I mean is that cancellation of certain works doesn't work for the benefit of the reader. In fact, as you say, if you read Crime and Punishment, or, for example, Demons of Dostoevsky, you can understand very well what's happening right now in Russia. And of course, the author and the works, they do have a relationship. But sometimes I feel that actually the works are smarter than the author. And with Dostoevsky, for example, he was a bigot, a great Russian chauvinist, but at the same time, we know that his novels are dialogic or carnivalesque, as Bakhtin would say, right? That a lot of the characters actually argue against points of view that Dostoevsky had, and they argue them very, very successfully. So that the book itself, I think, oftentimes the works of these authors are smarter than the authors themselves. And
the most important question we have no answer for: was Dostoevsky serious when he wrote in Karamazov's? There is a character, not Karamazov's, it's Demons. There is Shatov, who says that Russians are God-bearing people. Was it Dostoevsky's thought, or he was ironic when he wrote it? We don't know, actually. We might suspect that was his idea. He believed in that.
Although he's always very funny and that's ironic.
But speaking about cancellation, in The Empire Must Die, I have a story about Nicholas II and his prime minister Sergei Witte. Nicholas II was very anti-Semitic. He hated Jews, and Witte's wife was Jewish, so he had to deal with that problem. And once he asked. He came to Nicholas II saying that, okay, I've got a plan. We have to collect all the Jews of Russian Empire and drown them in the Black Sea. And Nicholas II said, that's impossible. Okay, so if you think that's impossible, then we find another plan and let them leave. So probably that's the same problem with any cancellation of anything. Like, if we cannot make something to let Russia disappear, and probably we won't be able. Thank God we won't be able to do that. So we must do something to coexist with it and with its culture. So it's not pragmatic to cancel any culture.
So this is the final question I'm going to ask you, but at War and Punishment, you apologize. You feel guilty for what Putin did, what Russia did to Ukraine. You apologize and you say we're all guilty of not seeing that. But I do have a little bit of a concern with that, because it does point to the fact that you do believe in collective guilt to a certain extent. And collective guilt to me...
You were not reading it carefully. I'm writing about my guilt, not about collective guilt.
But what I mean is that...
It's my personal guilt.
To me, you're not guilty of Russia's crimes. And so I was just trying to...
I'm speaking for myself, and you're speaking for me.
Yeah. probably that's how I read you, because to me, an author or, the Russian people as a whole cannot be collectively guilty of a government. But tell me a little bit more about that. Why did you feel you needed to apologize for the crimes that the Russian state did?
Because I used to think that it was not important at all. I think that it was my intellectual mistake. I was underestimating the seriousness of that problem. I was one of those Russian authors, Russian intellectuals who were neglecting this problem. And every time I had millions, thousands of arguments with Ukrainians who were trying to explain something to me, and I was like, no, it's not serious. And I think that is called imperial prejudice. So I was really, and that's it. I see that a lot right now. I see that a lot of voices, a lot of pains of different peoples are not heard, just because they are considered not really serious by the majority. That's how it works. Like, majority can be obsessed with its problems and just neglect minorities because it's not important for them. I was one of those journalists who preferred to write. That's an easy example. I have it in the book. Who preferred to write "на Украине," not "в Украине," although we all know that for Ukrainians that was kind of a principle. And I remember the day when I realized that I was wrong, and that was March 2014, when Putin officially declared the beginning of the invasion of Crimea, and we were horrified, and I was editor-in-chief of the TV channel, and I needed to write a letter to all of the journalists that starting today, we need to do anything we can to show our respect to Ukrainians. No matter what we think, no matter what are our feelings about Russian language, but we must do it for the people. We must respect the real people, not the abstract Russian language. We should say "в Украине" because they want it. And I think that's a little example that we really didn't care. And I do think that there is a problem, that for many Russians, for many Russian historians, that's unimaginable to call Russian Empire the colonial empire. They would start saying that no. Colonies are something beyond the ocean. Right. Like Russia didn't have colonies at all. Siberia is not colony. It's integral part of Mother Russia. And then they would continue saying, as Putin does, that we never invaded anyone. We all only tried to protect other peoples, and they asked for our help, and we were there to help them. And that's pathetic. I do think that we lost so much time neglecting all those issues. In the 90s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, a lot of effort was taken to discuss the Soviet legacy, to discuss crimes of Bolsheviks and Stalin, but the pre-Soviet history was untouched. It was not clear. It was clear that we should not undermine at least that the history of Russian Empire was considered to be sacred. And unfortunately, that was wrong. That was we should not have any sacred spaces. That's a bit destructive, but that's true. And I feel my own responsibility as the author who was writing a lot about politics and about history, that I shared the same blindness for so many years, and I was participating in some debates, trying to prove that I was right, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to admit that you were wrong.
I think by writing all of these books, you've more than atoned for your sins. I think you've managed to create narratives that are really alternative and managed to attack, not to attack, but to question exactly those kind of state-sanctioned historical narratives. And so thank you for your work. It's fantastic, and I think we should open this floor to questions from the audience. Maybe Manon would like to say a few words. The publisher? No? Okay.
Okay, I will start. Since I've got the privilege to sit next to Dora, Mr. Zigar, when I'm reading your books, it's very easy for me to imagine you just like you are today, standing on stage in front of an audience. There is a certain stand-up comedy feeling to your texts. Each fragment of your chapters ends with practically a punchline. So I would like to ask you two questions. First, for you, what is the importance of comedy and the comical effect in your writing? And then second, do you actually write with the image of an audience watching you and listening to you? Because there is really this feeling.
Yes, I'm thinking about the audience, because when I started writing All the Promised Men, I was thinking a lot about the people I write for, and in my mind I had the image of the people who are going to live in 100 years. And I wanted to write something for them, for those people who know nothing about us, about our political situation, about our context. And I needed to explain it to them. So I needed to make sure that it is clear. And I have that approach, that like the sign of respect to your audience, you should be clear. You should leave no questions. So yeah, and yes, I do hope, I'm trying to make the audience read the book till the end, especially when it's The Empire Must Die, which is the hard stopper. Yeah. So especially when it's really thick enough to kill a person. So I need to do something to convince people read more rather than less. So yeah, it needs to be kind of readable.
Some other questions from the audience?
Thank you both for the conversation. It was really interesting. The question is, you were talking about the shame, and if we're talking about Russia, when we start everything from the clear list, and when the current regime will fall, should we start from the shame? Should we start from the analyzing of our mistakes? Will it be the right beginning?
I do think that it's always right time. So there are no wrong times. And I do think that the argument, it's not the time now, we'll do it later, that's a bad argument. There is always time to say truth. There are no wrong times. So every time, for example, Russian independent media right now are torn apart by different scandals. And for example, a few months ago, there was an amazing documentary published by the team of Alexei Navalny about the 90s. And actually, I loved it, everything except for the title. I think the title was horrible and the documentary was very good. The title was Traitors. To my mind, it was not wise to call anyone traitor in current situation we are. But the very popular argument was, it's wrong time now to uncover all the crimes of the 90s. It's not right time to criticize the oligarchs. You should focus on Putin. No, there are no right times and wrong times. We can't do anything all the time, and we should do everything all the time. We missed the opportunity to talk about history properly in the 90s and when it was possible. So I think it's okay to start with shame. It's not okay not to talk. Just I usually I'm trying to convince Russian politicians not to avoid Ukrainian topic, because for just 3 days ago I was talking to Yulia Navalny, asking her not to avoid that topic. I do think that that's our responsibility. We need to talk. We need not to forget. We need to repeat it again and again, and it's not enough. And actually, the next day she was kind of attacked in Lisbon by Ukrainian protesters. But I guess that it's still our responsibility. Yeah, we should raise everything that is not really convenient. Yeah, we are in a very inconvenient situation. We won't have any other more comfortable life.
Eva?
Thank you very much for this brilliant speech and for the brilliant conversation between both of you. Dimitър Кенаров started reminding the old Renaissance saying that the art is instruction by entertainment. And after that came this question about the hidden comic attitude of your style. And I wonder how and in which way the entertainment can be combined with the tragedy. Because I used to think that war is the most enormous tragedy in the world. And you even use such expression as shame, for example. And is it possible at all to combine entertainment, shame, and tragedy? Of course, entertainment has two different poles. The one is the pure entertainment of the society spectacle. And the other is, let's say, what the Russian used to say, smechovaya kultura. That means this old tradition of love from below, which in a way, even the most tragic things could be very comic. Where do you stand in this spectrum between pure entertainment and smechovaya kultura?
It was very clear after the beginning of the invasion in February and March 2022, how Russian authorities started reacting to numerous social media posts by different Russian celebrities. And how they reacted, how they started putting pressure on them, how they started punishing them. There was a group of the people who were punished in the most severe way. You might guess who were those people. Those people were stand-up comedians. Mostly, speaking broadly, the most punished people were the biggest celebrities. Because they were the most influential. They had millions of followers on Instagram and on Instagram mostly. And their posts were the most painful for the authorities, for Putin. And the most popular person, the most popular entertainer in Russia, Ivan Urgant, was not forgiven for posting just a black square on his Instagram. So he said nothing. He just symbolically showed that he was not happy because of the beginning of the war, and he was punished in a very severe way. And so it's clear that the authorities care about stand-up comedians, care about the pop star celebrities, about the entertainers much more than they care about intellectuals. All the intellectuals were, in a way, all those intellectuals who protested against the invasion and then decided to stay, most of them were forgiven. It's okay to be a political scientist, it's okay to be even a journalist, it's okay to be, but it's not okay to be a celebrity and to protest. If you are a celebrity, you are going to be really punished in Russia. So, and that's a very paradoxical scenario. And actually, from another point of view, when I was leaving Russia in 2022, I was thinking of the ways how to fight against that war. What could be done to undermine that Putin's propaganda? And actually, my first idea was an attempt to persuade all Russian comedians, all Russian entertainers to start speaking about it in an entertaining way. Not only Van Urgan, but Maxim Galkin, or other famous Russian superstars could have done much more than all Russian independent media combined. I do think that they are important. They are carrying much more important message, even though they are not serious enough. But we know that we have to deal with broader audiences. We know that the audience of Russian media in exile, there are different outlets broadcasting working from Riga, from Berlin, from Amsterdam, from Vilnius, and they cover up to 20 million people living in Russia. And that's enough. That's not enough. That's a lot, but not enough. That's more than 10%, probably 15% of the population. Because like the rest of the people have an access to any kind of information. They just don't want to. So the possibility of entertainment industry to get through and to reach all those apathetic people is much higher. I saw that in a different way. When I wrote All the Tremendous Men, I realized that the number of people who read the book in Russia is much bigger than the audience of the TV channel, which I was running the same moment. Because it was considered to be very politically oriented news TV channel, and only those people who cared about the news were watching it. And the book was considered to be something more entertaining and more funny, and the audience, the outreach was bigger. So yeah, I do believe that, and it's not new. It was the same way decades ago. So yeah, I do believe that entertainers will have more and more impact on the Russian political situation and the European political situation. And so actually after Zelensky being elected as president, we have a brand new world.
And the final question, последен въпрос.
Thank you so much. It's really a big privilege to talk to you in English in the Royal Palace, knowing the fact that Russian is mother tongue for both of us. Firstly, I read your book, The Imperial Must Die. To be honest, I had to check the proper name in English because I read it in Russian. And you talk about the Russian empire which finally died. Now we are witnessing another shape of empire, Russian Federation. And my question is very simple, but it's really a big privilege to have an answer from such intellectual person as you. What do you think every one of us should do to make this empire die and never rebuild again? Because as everybody know, after the Russian Revolution, the Russian Empire, the Russian state in the form of Soviet Union has been reborn. What every one of us should do in order this empire not to be reborn again? Thank you.
Thank you. No, actually, when I was writing The Empire Must Die, I didn't have any other plans to write any sequel, but now I've almost finished the sequel, the book about another empire and the death of the next empire, which is Soviet Empire. And now I know that it's going to be a trilogy. Because after Russian Empire of Nicholas II and after Soviet Empire, we have the Third Reich, the Third Empire of Vladimir Putin, and that empire will finally die as well. And I hope that, as in medieval Russia, there was saying that Moscow is the third Rome, and there will be no fourth. So I hope that the current Russian Empire is the third, and there is going to be no fourth. I believe that after the invasion of Ukraine, it's impossible because the idea of Russian Empire itself is completely irrelevant, and it's going to be clearer. But that's a very good question. What should all of us do? I have the answer for myself. I can boast with that I know that my mission is to write about history. And that's like, I do believe that when I write about Russian history, that's my contribution. And I cannot create the contribution for other people. But, for example, I was exchanging letters with Alexei Navalny when he was in prison, and in his last letter, which he wrote from the colony behind the Arctic Circle, he was always very inspiring, and he was encouraging me to work, and he was like, "Yeah, you did it right that you moved to America. It's very important not to remain in the closed immigrant bubble. It's very important not to be depressed. It's very important to work. It's very important to integrate. It's very important just to live your life and to be happy, so you will have the opportunity, if there is an opportunity for you to be helpful for the new Russia, you will be able to participate. You will be able to contribute. So you will be able to work only if you are alive and capable and happy enough to survive. So I think that's very important. That's very important to find the purpose, to work, to stay safe, to stay mental healthy, and to do sports. Because, we have very important mission. We have to outlive the people who think that they're going to live forever.